Ryu Hyun-oh has resigned. It follows a public outcry over the case of a woman who was raped and murdered despite making a frantic phone call to police. From Seoul, here's Lucy Williamson.
South Korea's police chief said he would take full responsibility for what he called the horrendous results caused by the carelessness of his force. The body of the victim was found dismembered at a house in Suwon, 13 hours after she had called the emergency services, giving a detailed description of her location. Police had spent hours searching the wrong area, despite the victim being just a few minutes' drive away from the nearest station. When they found the suspect, he was reportedly disposing of her body.
A strongly pro-Russian former KGB officer has won the presidential election in the breakaway Georgian territory of South Ossetia. Leonid Tibelov won 54% of the vote. His victory will further increase tensions between Russia and Georgia in the region. This report from Damien McGuinness.
South Ossetia's new leader, Leonid Tibelov, says he would like South Ossetia to unify with North Ossetia, which is in Russia, effectively making the territory a part of Russia. But this would antagonize Georgia, which, supported by Europe and the US, regards South Ossetia as Georgian territory occupied by Russian troops. Moscow already supports South Ossetia financially and militarily.
That was Damien McGuinness reporting. This is Zoe Diamond with the latest world news from the BBC. People in the Indonesian province of Aceh have been voting in the second election since a peace agreement ended a 30-year separatist war in 2005. The most important poll is for the post of the governor of Aceh, which enjoys considerable autonomy. The current governor, Wande Yusuf, is facing a strong challenge from Zainal Abdullah, who's backed by many supporters of the former rebel movement. The BBC has been told that the British government approved the rendition in 2004 of a terrorism suspect to Libya, where he says he was tortured by Colonel Gaddafi's security officials. Evidence emerged last year that the British Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, was involved in the rendition of Abdel Hakim Belhaj, who's now a military commander in the Libyan capital, Tripoli. The BBC understands that the actions of MI6 were authorised by the then Labour government in Britain. Peter Taylor reports.
Successive British governments have always said they were never complicit in illegal rendition and torture. But a document discovered in the ruined headquarters of Libyan intelligence last year suggests it may have been otherwise. A letter from a senior MI6 officer written in 2004 to Libya's intelligence chief refers to the rendition of Abdel Hakim Belhaj and points out that the intelligence was British. The BBC now understands that MI6's actions were authorised by the Labour government of the time, although at what level it's not clear.
China is setting up a single industry body to oversee all production of rare earths, key minerals over which it has a virtual global monopoly. The move brings under strict state control what has become the country's most politically charged commodity. The EU, Japan and the US are all in dispute with China over rare earths. Rare earths are used in a range of electronics. BBC News.
Hello, this is Dan Damon with World Update from the BBC World Service, and hello to you. In our programme in the first part, we'll descend below London into the city's Victorian sewer system.
We dealt with hand grenades, shopping trolleys.
Hand grenades?
Oh, yes. Yes, it just happens. I mean, sewers, we live in a society where it's out of sight, out of mind, and if you've got a gun and the police are following you and you want to get rid of it, where would you put it? Down the drain.
Plus, a new book about Zionism in crisis. We'll hear from the author, as well as a defence of why the Holocaust must be at the centre of American Jewish identity.
The idea that little children, little babies, could be taken into gas chambers with their mothers. How could I not define myself by the tragedy of my mother?
You're listening to World Update from the BBC, and on the World Service Facebook page, that's our discussion point. Is Zionism in crisis? The author Peter Beinart, who is a proud Zionist, he says, believes that too many of those who support Israel do it without thinking about the effect on Israel's democracy. That's the title of his new book, The Crisis of Zionism. Well, we'll get to the book and the author later in the programme. When I was in New York last month, though, I found that there is an ongoing debate about American Jewish identity and how American Jews relate to Israel. One article that caused a bit of a stir was by a young, modern Orthodox Jewish man called Benjamin Weinreich. He's a student at Yeshiva University in New York. He's just published an article in the student magazine called Why It's Time for Jews to Get Over the Holocaust. He himself is the grandson of 2 Holocaust survivors. I caught up with Benjamin on campus, as well as with a senior member of the New York Jewish community, Assemblyman Dov Heikind. I asked them for their views on the subject of the Holocaust.
I think that there is a certain tendency in certain parts of the Jewish community to act as if the Holocaust is sort of the central event in our history, as opposed to viewing it in its context in which it's one in a long line of events. That some people try to make it the source for Jewish identity, which I think is dangerous and wrong-headed, since the source of national or religious identity really shouldn't be one particularly intense spate of persecution, as major as it was. And I think some people use it as a fuel for a certain paranoia that you sometimes find in the Jewish community. You know, we've been oppressed and persecuted for so long that some segments have come to sort of expect it. Like, you know, it's like, okay, everyone else has gone after us, who's next? And I think that it's sort of, well, yes, it's good to be wary, and it's good to know your history and to know what could happen, because nobody was expecting it in Germany in 1938 either. Well, almost nobody. But that doesn't mean you should constantly be worried about it to the point where it's almost unhealthy, and I think in some people it is unhealthy.
Dov Heikind, a member of the New York State Assembly. We are sitting within the area of the largest Jewish and Orthodox community in the United States. As someone whose parents went through the Holocaust, my mother surviving Auschwitz, I'm always reading about the Holocaust. To this day, I never stop. I wish I could, but I don't.
Now, this is a difficult question to ask you, bearing in mind your family background, but we've spoken to a young Jewish man at the university, Yeshiva University, who says it's time for Jews to stop defining themselves by the Holocaust. What's your reaction?
Well, you know, individuals can define themselves any way they want. The Holocaust was an event unparalleled in the history of the world. The idea that little children, little babies, could be taken into gas chambers with their mothers. How could I not define myself by the tragedy of my mother? Sometimes I think, I'm here. I have children. I have grandchildren at this point. And my mother was near the gas chamber. My mother saw her own mother go straight into the gas chamber. What should I define myself by, if not these events? I shouldn't let it control me. I shouldn't let it take over my existence. But it is an event that speaks louder than anything else. The lessons of the Holocaust are the kind of lessons that, as to why I do what I do these past 30 years in government, why I speak out, why I feel so strongly. I'm not out of control. I'm very much in control. But after what my people went through, letting the Holocaust define who I am as a person is the very least I can do in memory of the 6 million.
To me, at least, being an American Jew is kind of a constant identity crisis in one way or another, because you feel like you have 2 national identities at once. I mean, I guess dual citizens or children of immigrants in general might also feel this, but I know that I feel as a Jew very intensely, because on the one hand you've got your loyalty to America, because, you know, we live here and they've been pretty nice to us on the whole. On the other hand, you also feel a duty to the Jews as a nation, because, well, that's your nation. And then